Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're decoding the hidden biological machinery that's literally running your body right now. Beneath your everyday routines, there is this invisible operating system, and it governs everything: your sleep, your energy, your emotions, your resilience. By the time we wrap up, you're going to see just how deeply interconnected these systems actually are, how every single habit is a signal, and how your biology dictates the entire trajectory of your life. Get ready, because we're about to uncover the hidden manual for your own human potential. Let's dive in.
So let's start with a mystery, and I want you to treat this everyday symptom as a major clue. Have you ever noticed that right after reading a super stressful email, the back of your neck or your shoulders just start to physically ache? Like, why does a purely psychological event, literally just pixels on a screen, create immediate, localized physical pain in your muscles? To figure this out, we have to look beneath the surface at a process that's constantly running in the background of your life. Okay, let's dive into this. The answer actually begins with something called allostatic load. Now, when we talk about stress, we usually describe it as a feeling, right? Like, I feel stressed. But biologically, it is a literal physical weight on your adaptive systems. You see, your body is constantly trying to maintain homeostasis, basically a stable internal environment. So every single time a stressor hits you, your physiological systems fire up to adapt. And if those systems are repeatedly triggered without enough time to recover, or if they just fail to shut down altogether, you accumulate this allostatic load. It is quite literally wear and tear on your biology. To manage all of this load, your autonomic nervous system acts as your body's command center, and it's split into two fiercely competing branches. On one side, you've got the sympathetic nervous system. This is your classic fight-or-flight response. It pumps out epinephrine, spikes your heart rate, and shunts blood right to your muscles. It is entirely built for raw survival. On the other side is your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest branch. This one promotes all those recuperative anabolic processes, like lowering your blood pressure and actually letting your body heal. For you to function optimally, these two just have to remain in perfect balance. But as you probably know, in our modern world, that balance is under constant siege. Let's move to the timeline here and see how this builds, because the sheer speed of this stress cascade is honestly staggering. When you perceive a threat, like that bad email, your brain's emotional center, the amygdala, reacts in actual milliseconds. Within seconds, your sympathetic nervous system dumps epinephrine, cranking up your heart rate and your breathing. But here is the deeper mechanism beneath all that: the HPA axis. It releases cortisol. And this stress hormone can linger and sustain this biological alarm state for up to 90 minutes after the stressor has completely vanished. Think about that. Your conscious mind might have moved on, but your biology is still actively fighting a war.
Section 1. The muscle-emotion connection, decoding the third motor system.
All right, so to decode that neck pain we talked about earlier, we have to look at a massive breakthrough by a researcher named Holstich. He introduced the concept of a third motor system. What he discovered was that the limbic system, which is your brain's emotional center, isn't just sitting there processing feelings. It actually has a direct physical wire right into your spinal motor system. It literally sets the gain or the tension on your muscles. This means your emotional brain has the physical authority to trigger your muscles completely automatically. It entirely bypasses your conscious control. And that brings us to the trapezius muscle, right there in your neck and shoulders. This specific muscle receives powerful, direct input from that emotional third motor system we just talked about. And here is the consequence that most people never see. Psychological stress causes sustained low-level electrical activity right here, even while you are fast asleep. Because the muscle never truly rests, the individual motor units become strained. This leads to micro-damage that you can actually see under a microscope as ragged red and moth-eaten muscle fibers. So you aren't just holding tension. Your psychological stress is literally tearing and damaging your physical muscle tissue while you dream. Crazy, right? So the crucial point here is that this creates an invisible somatosensory psychic loop. That microdamage we just talked about in your trapezius sends constant low-grade pain signals right back to your brain, while your brain interprets this localized pain as a systemic threat, which then keeps your sympathetic nervous system locked on high alert. And that high alert state, it completely suppresses your parasympathetic system's ability to step in and recover. It's wild. Mental stress causes physical muscle damage. That physical damage causes pain, and then that pain triggers even more systemic stress. It is a closed, self-sustaining feedback loop.
Moving on to Section 2. Tracking your invisible biology.
the footprints of the autonomic war. So how do we actually measure this invisible war happening inside us? The answer is heart rate variability, or HRV. Now, you've probably seen this metric on a smartwatch or a fitness tracker, but I promise you, it is so much more than just a generic fitness score. It is the precise fluctuation in the milliseconds between your heartbeats. HRV is the literal, measurable footprint of that constant tug of war between your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. A higher HRV means your body is dynamically adapting to its environment. But a lower HRV, that means your system is rigid, overloaded, and stuck in a highly stressed state. Now, a well-functioning, resilient system has a very predictable circadian rhythm. In healthy individuals, HRV drops to its absolute lowest in the late afternoon when your daily allostatic load is peaking. Then, it surges during deep sleep when your parasympathetic system is fully repairing the body. But here's the massive revelation. Individuals with severe psychiatric conditions like major depression show significantly lower HRV overall and a complete breakdown of this natural rhythm. Their biological resilience is just depleted, which profoundly limits their actual physical ability to cope with emotional stress. And this brilliantly illustrates the incredibly deceptive nature of our own stress recovery. Let's say you just had a stressful event. You take a few deep breaths, and within 10 minutes, your heart rate and respiration normalize. You probably think to yourself, okay, I'm calm now. But beneath the surface, sympathetic vascular responses, things like restricted peripheral blood flow and elevated blood pressure, remain totally abnormal for much, much longer. Just because you feel calm does not actually mean your biology has returned to baseline. Modern science can track this hidden state with staggering precision. For instance, emotional valence, which is whether an emotion is positive or negative, is directly correlated to tiny electrical signals in your facial muscles. Think of the corrugator muscle when you furrow your brow. But emotional arousal, the raw physical intensity of the stress, is tracked by electrodermal activity and fingertip temperature. Yep, when your sympathetic nervous system fires, it literally pulls blood away from your extremities to protect your vital organs. That means cold hands aren't always just a sign of a drafty room. They are a direct physiological signal that your body is secretly preparing for war. Let's jump in to Section 3, Biohacking Through the Senses, Reprogramming the Loop. So if our environment and our thoughts can hijack our biology this easily, how in the world do we take the controls back? Well, consider this highly specific number, 459 to 483 nanometers. This is a very specific wavelength of monochromatic blue light. When the specific light hits the specialized photoreceptors in your retina, it sends a signal directly to your brain's master circadian clock. It instantly suppresses melatonin production, accelerates your reaction times, and forcefully increases your daytime alertness. Literally just changing the spectrum of light in your room is a direct biological hack to rewrite your nervous system's current state. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is something called the olfactory shortcut. Think about this. Every single sense you have, your vision, touch, hearing, they all have to pass through the brain's main relay station, the thalamus, before they even get processed, except for one, smell. Aromatic molecules stimulate your nasal receptors and travel directly to the amygdala, your emotional center, and the hippocampus, your memory center. It bypasses the thalamus entirely. Within actual milliseconds, long before you even consciously identify what the scent is, your brain's emotional architecture is physically altered. And we can actually use that shortcut strategically. Listen, this is not about nice-smelling spa treatments. This is fundamental molecular reprogramming. For example, menthol physically activates cold-sensitive TRPM8 receptors to force a state of clean, embodied vitality, completely without those caffeine jitters. On the flip side, linolenic acetate actively forces the downregulation of your waking arousal systems. Apigenin, which you find in chamomile, actually binds to the exact same receptor sites in your brain as anti-anxiety benzodiazepine medications. It forces a directional shift straight toward deep sleep. You are literally inserting chemical keys right into your nervous system's locks. Which leaves us with a truly profound realization. We have decoded the machinery here today. Your body is not just some static object. It is a continuous, exquisitely sensitive biological loop. It's constantly listening to the light you see, the molecules you breathe, and the words you read. Every single habit is a signal. So now that you have the operating manual, how will you redesign your environment to master your own human potential?